Hi, and welcome to the Wizardry Webcast here, produced by the SOE Community Department. Today with me, I have Senior Producer Todd Carson on my far right, and Senior Galactic Brand Manager Omid Dariani, as he likes to be known.
That's what I do.
That's his tagline.
There we go. So why don't you guys tell me a little bit about what your roles are on the team? What does a producer do for a video game? What does a brand manager do? Omid, can we start with you?
Sure. Brand manager is generally in charge of all the marketing.
Part of what a producer does is interrupt whenever anybody else is
and brand
talking.
managers get those guys fired.
Oh.
So Todd and I work very closely together. Pretty much every game has a combination of a producer and a brand manager that look at the game from both angles. You know, the angle of how we're marketing this, how we're getting this to players, as well as is this game good and are we getting it done on time?
In SOE, we call it business partners.
There we go. Okay. And for all of those of you who don't know, my name is Eric Paistro Cleaver. I'm the community manager for Wizardry Online.
Okay. You want to talk about what the producer does besides interrupt? Come on.
Well, so what does the producer do besides interrupt people?
Well, going along with what Omid said, I mean, on this project in particular, where it's an externally developed title, really just make sure that we coordinate amongst everyone, platform group, our operations group, with marketing, with community, and make sure that everyone's on the same page. In development, for example, Clone Wars Adventures, which is another game that I'm overseeing, it's motivating the development team and making sure we hit our milestones and we do things in a timely manner and make the game fun. And that one goes on all games. Helping make sure Wizardry is fun, making sure any game that we're working on, that our design team and our art team are making the game we want to see.
Awesome.
But that again, Omid works with me on that because if we're not making the game that's going to be fun, then he can't really market it so that it's fun for the players.
We also like fun.
Fun is good.
There we go. Fun. It's what it's all about. What is Wizardry Online? Can you give me the movie pitch for it? 2 sentences?
Absolutely. So Wizardry Online is pretty much the hardest core MMO that's ever been made. I mean, you're talking about people are dropping like flies. There's, sort of roving gangs of PvP players. It's going to be freaking awesome. Demons everywhere. Heavy metal music.
There we go. It's all about the metal.
I'm just counting your sentences, sorry.
You have anything you want to add on top of that? Anything else?
No, I think as we go through this, we'll get in a lot of details about what Wizardry is and why it's different than a lot of other games that you've played and why it's going to be more fun.
Okay, well, let's get into the core gameplay then. Now, the number one thing everybody thinks of when they think about Wizardry Online is permadeath. So tell us a little bit about how permadeath impacts the game.
Well, obviously, it has the potential for huge impact. But the way it's going to impact most players is you're going to die at some point. What's going to happen when you die as a player is you need to offer to the gods something of value to reduce the risk of getting permadeath. And what that means is items that you are carrying with you currently, items that you found through dungeons, items that you've purchased from vendors, traded with other players, you need to sacrifice some of those items to increase your chance of being successfully resurrected.
Yeah, it's just like when you die in real life.
Exactly. That's why we're still here. Luckily, and so anyway, what that is you're gonna be able to see when you're playing the game and you die. This window will pop up and it'll talk about resurrection when you get back to the statue. You will eventually have 2 chances for resurrection. If you fail the first one, you'll have a second chance. And you'll see when you put items into the window that's opened up, what your % chances success of resurrecting.
Yeah, what I really love about it is that it adds a level of risk to play. I mean, you play a lot of these games. It's fun, but if you die, like if you run off and do something foolish, like oh well, I'll just go get my body. It's no big deal. In Wizardry, every time you make a mistake, you are punished for it, and so people have to play very seriously. You have to take the game really seriously and kind of respect it, because the further along you go, the easier it is to permadie, and the more stuff you're going to have to cough up to. I don't know, what's it called?
To counteract
that horrible statue guy. Yeah. I can't remember his name. It's like Steve Statue.
So I've been playing in the beta, and I experienced permadeath for the first time last night. I was sort of, just soloing my way along, not taking it too seriously. I pulled a little bit more than I could handle by myself. Monsters took me down. says you have a 95% chance. I'm like, 95? No problem. Roll them bones. And of course my number came up and I got reduced to ash, which is sort of the first stage of
That's
death.
right. So you have a second chance after that.
Yes, and I did make the second roll, but certainly the second I experienced that, I took it a lot more seriously. It wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to keep pulling willy-nilly. It was every pull I thought about before I made it, and that really changed my focus and perception in the game.
And there's going to be other things that aren't necessarily in the game right now, but when we introduce this more of the marketplace stuff, things that you can do to increase your survivability. So it's permadeath is going to be a very, very edge case, but as Omid says, the fact that it's there creates risk. I mean, just similar to what we did in original EverQuest, when you lost your corpse deep in a dungeon. It was a lot of risk, and so players were very careful, and it leads to, I think, our next topic conversation, which is groups and safety in numbers and things like that. And the game changes, and players are really aware of getting into sticky situations and trying to be as careful as they can, just because there's that tiny, small chance of permadeath.
Yeah, I really like it because, I don't like playing with fools. Like, you run around in a lot of these games, there's like 12-year-old kids and, they're, pull stuff and like Leroy Jenkins things and, it gets bad, right? You're not going to have that happen as much in Wizardry because like those kinds of people are just never going to get out of the early stages of the game. So by the time you get to the point where you're playing like the high level, even the mid-level content, you're going to be playing with serious people.
It's true.
So one of the things you alluded to was groups and social interaction. And of course that brings up what Omid said earlier about roving gangs of PvPers. So can you talk a little bit about PvP in Wizardry?
Sure. Well, once you reach Soul level 2, so you'll have all your characters and they're going to have their own ranking levels as in every game. Then you have a Soul that's tied into basically an account level. And so it's kind of a story progression. So let me get a little backstory here. So when your first character goes through and starts doing storylines of quests, that story arc is saved across any other characters you make on that account. So when you create another new character, you don't have to go through the same intro area. You can do those storylines again, but you can also just jump right into the dungeons. Whatever dungeon you're at, based on what storyline your account, we call it the soul, whatever storyline your soul has done. So when your soul reaches level 2, which is usually around 4, 5, maybe level 3 on your character, then you are eligible for PvP. Okay? So you have some time in the game with the safety net around you where you can't get PvP'd, you can't PvP other people, so it's kind of a little intro area. But once you reach that, there's nothing to prevent you from being attacked by another player.
Yeah, when you say eligible, you mean you are involved in
You
PvP.
are involved. Now, there is a safety net in the UI that you can't accidentally attack another player because there are repercussions for PvPing. So you actually have to go into your UI, you change a little option there, and then you can go ahead and attack other players. Other than criminals. And criminals are people that have done PvP on other players. They gain criminal status. So you're a level 10 character and you want to beat up on some noobs, some level 5 characters, you can. You can go and wait for them in that first dungeon they get to, and you can beat the heck out of them. Every time you do that, though, you get basically like a faction. You get a criminal status that builds up. And what happens is then you go back into town where you have to go to level up your character because you have to go back to a camp or an inn to level up your character. And then to level up your soul, you have to go within a building that's surrounded by guards. So in order to do that, you have to have good faction with the guards. If you're a criminal, they won't let you in there. They'll capture you and take you to prison.
And those guards hit for a lot.
Yeah. So the repercussions of PvP is it makes the game more difficult for you if you become a criminal. And you have to wait a certain amount of time, and it's a long time, for that status to eventually grow back down. You have to sneak in through part of the town and go to the shady side of town to purchase items if you're a criminal status.
Yeah, it's cool too because there are going to be people who, grief and who want to PvP, and that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be me for sure. But there are a whole bunch of systems in place, including the criminal system, the attack system. There's also a bounty hunting system, so you can actually put up bounties against people who are just griefing or just people you don't like. Like if any of my ex-girlfriends are playing, they will have bounties on them, that sort of thing. So that system is actually going to balance this out a lot, and I think going to be really fun in the whole PvP economy.
It is. Yeah, and I mean, we could talk about PvP I could probably talk about it for an hour because it is fun. It's another thing to be afraid of when you're out there playing. You're afraid of dying from attacking NPCs. You're also afraid of dying from other players.
And getting your stuff stolen.
And
right?
getting your stuff stolen. But there are repercussions. So not a lot of people at the mid levels are going to necessarily want to be attacking you, because if they've worked that hard to get to those mid levels, where certainly they're more powerful than you if you're leveling slower or you got a late start, there's repercussions for them that will stop their progress in continuing to level if they PvP. So it kind of balances out. Sure, there might be a few guys like Omid who are, I've got powerful enough, I'm going to do it. And then all of a sudden, okay, that's fine. You got me this one time. I'm now leveling up, and I'm going to surpass you at some point because you're a criminal and you can't keep progressing. So, and that leads to the next thing. You were asking about grouping.
Yes.
Grouping is going to be essential in this game. You're not going to be able to solo through the game and get all the way to the top, because the dungeons are dangerous, because there are going to be those few people out there who are PvPing. You're going to want to make friends, and that's going to help you in the game. It's very important to make friends.
Well, the way I like to think about it is the most important skill in Wizardry Online is making friends and influencing people. Anything else, any actual gameplay skill is secondary to being able to relate to your fellow player, to meet people and to understand where they're at and what you can do for them, what they can do for you. It is a hyper social game in the end, because your actions do have dramatic impact.
Yeah. Well, to be successful in the game, yes, you're going to have to have friends.
There you go.
Or people at least that you're comfortable playing with on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, there's matchmaking, and it'll be easy to get into the dungeons and find groups to start with, but the content is difficult enough. And I mean, it kind of goes back to like the classic gameplay of Wizardry that we're trying to have. You need to have a wizard, you need to have a thief, you need to have a fighter, you need to have a priest to heal you all up. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to put down a camp and to heal yourself, because this is a hardcore game. Like it's like it was in the 80s and the 90s when you're playing computer games, just not forgiving at all.
Yeah, but still fun. That's part of what makes it fun.
Yeah,
Totally.
Risk first reward kind of thing.
I was grouping up in the very first dungeon that you enter, the sewers, and we found a treasure chest, and we had no thief. And that was bad times, because all of a sudden we were knocked out with sleeping gas.
Yep.
And had any monster wandered along, my mage self would have been in a whole lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, I've died a few times from trying to open chests and not being able to disarm them properly. Yeah, but again, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's an element of risk. It's not just, hey, I'm going to go up and slash barrels and get all the loot. It's, hey, it's a risk first reward. Do you want to try to do this? Have you leveled your skills up enough? That's what makes it fun. But there's also a lot of base D&D role playing in it, a lot of D&D skills, and we can talk about that later if you want. I mean, one of the first things you do when you create a character in Wizardry Online is you start messing with your stats. Each race has different stats. Classes,
there's a random roll.
A random roll. Classes require different levels of each stat. I mean, you can't be a mage if your intelligence is 8.
Yes.
So it goes into that classic D&D role-playing stuff.
Make sure to re-roll your dice if you don't get anything above a 10. Because you can just keep backing out and then rolling again when you're making a character.
8's pretty good, but yeah, 10 would be nice.
I don't settle for anything less than an 11.
You're going for the double digits.
Yep.
He's willing to spend hours there re-rolling.
Well, for all this griefing, it's really going to come in handy.
I know, right?
It all changes next time you level, so it's all random.
Now, another way that Wizardry Online is a little bit different than most other MMOs on the market is there are puzzles involved. There's some platforming elements. It's not just, hit one, let your auto attack go, every so often hit a skill.
That's right.
Combat's very involved in positioning.
It's in positioning. So one of the things you'll find early on, you lock onto a target, you can jump forward, attack as many times as you want. You hit your attack button. You don't just hit it and let go. You have to push the attack button to slash at the monster. You have the ability to jump back and out of range. So you quickly learn, like when you're in range, you hit. When the monster's in range, it can hit. You can block with the shield. And not just say, hit the block skill. It's you hold your shield in front, and the shield is basically taking damage.
Yeah, it has its own health bar.
And then you time it. So there's a lot of player skill involved in combat, as well as, for playing a melee class versus a range class, like a wizard or even a priest. Definitely definitely is different than traditional MMOs.
Yeah, I love the fact that when you fire off a spell or fire off an arrow, a dude just moves. And you just move out of the way, unlike most of the games where that thing will chase you around, that sort of thing.
They're not heat-seeking arrows.
What I think is really nice is if he moves and your attack hits somebody else, now you're going to have twice as many enemies incoming because, the guy you hit is pissed off. He's actually taking the damage for your attack because it hit him.
Yeah.
And the guy you initially attacked is probably already coming in anyways.
Yeah, and if you have that flag off in your UI, you might have hit another dude who's in the dungeon with you, and then it's on.
Yes. I have not yet taken my PvP flag off.
It's wise.
That's a little bit more than I'm ready to commit to at this point.
Yeah.
Well, you still can do some PvP without taking that flag off, and that is only against criminals.
Yes.
So people that have PvP'd other people, or even looted the bodies. So if you die in a dungeon, your body's there with your gear on it. Now anyone can go up and take some gear off of you. However, they're going to be a criminal. The only time you can loot gear off a dead body and not be a criminal is if that person stole something from you and you take that item back.
Or if you specifically allow.
Or if someone has said, hey, go ahead and loot my body because they're going to give it back, sure. But yeah, so it's a lot more complicated than it seems on the surface, but you don't always get into that. The platforming stuff is another added complication, not complication, but additional element of fun. Mm-hmm. But you don't really get into a lot of the platforming until later levels. Again, the PvP, you get a few levels of playing and not actually experiencing it. So I think the game does a really good job of introducing you to the systems of the game, to the things that are different, and then slowly brings you into the more complicated stuff. And we're kind of getting a little advanced here, but it's definitely what makes it fun. It's that higher level stuff.
I think like that a lot of that weird stuff and unusual feeling comes from the fact that it's a Japanese game. And it has a lot of like Japanese game sensibilities. So you'll see things in there that's like, oh man, that reminds me of like Final Fantasy, or you'll see very Japanese. We're still in the beta, so I mean there's a little bit of English in there. Like it's pretty fun, like some of the things that you can find, and it really does kind of feel like you're playing this old console JRPG at times. Like you have to go around, so you have to pay attention to the story sometimes.
Sure,
you'll get quizzed.
Yep.
You'll get quizzed on like which season is being referenced in some puzzle. And if you don't do it right, you get punished or you're gated and you can't go on to the next area.
Right.
So I mean this kind of older sensibility, I don't know, for me like that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that brings up a good point. There are puzzles that you solve within each dungeon that do require you to pay attention, maybe even do a little bit of math skills, remember storylines. I mean, so it's some strange amalgamation of a platformer and a puzzle game and an MMORPG.
One of the things that really stuck out at me at my last time playing was I found a key that had a mysterious symbol on it. Mm-hmm. And I know I had seen a chest with a mysterious symbol on it somewhere. Now, in most MMOs, it would be highlighted on the map, and there would be big glowing arrows pointing from heaven saying, go right here. Wizardry's like, hey, remember where you saw the chest,
That's right.
And that really leads to that bigger community that I'm talking about, where that guy might not be as good a fighter, but if he really knows the game and knows the quests and he's good at that aspect of the game, he's just as valuable to your group.
Right.
Yeah, we're really going to reward the know-it-alls for this, which is nice.
There you go.
Hey, there's a question out there, is there a healer class? And the answer is yes. So the 4 classes are fighter, thief, mage, and then priest. And the priest is a healer class.
Yes. Although every class has multiple trees of specialization.
Right.
So in the mage class, which is what I'm playing, you have a crowd control type aspect of the class. There's some debuffing going on there, and there's also the direct damage. We're going to throw out the big bombs.
Right, and I'm playing a fighter, and I have the ability to heal myself occasionally as well.
Yeah.
And in fact, when you progress later on, you can switch classes, and you can save certain abilities from the previous class. So you almost can, and kind of giving out my little hint here, but you can really create a paladin, where you can start as a priest class and switch to a fighter, or you can do the opposite.
But nobody should want to do that, dude. Paladin's no good.
I mean, really, there's a lot, as you get higher levels and you progress further, there's a lot more going on with the game than what first meets the eye. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. So definitely want everybody out there watching to come check the game out. If you haven't signed up for beta yet, wizardrythegame.com. I think we're dropping another 1,000 beta invites
Yes,
this
we are.
afternoon.
And probably more again tomorrow.
More again tomorrow. So there's plenty of opportunities to get in. If you're out there, you've been waiting, you're all excited to get in, we are going to get you in. There's a lot of people out there interested.
And if you can't wait on the social channels on Facebook and Twitter, just every once in a while a beta key pops up.
There you go.
Is that right, Eric?
That is right. We have to do a little bit more of that, but something we're definitely going to be doing a lot of.
That's how he makes sure you get your work done, see?
There we go.
Says it publicly.
He's made a public promise for me. Thanks, Hamid.
You're welcome.
That's how you earn that big title.
That's what I do.
Galactic.
Okay, so let's go out. I want to thank everybody for watching this production of the SOE community team. Coming up next week, we have 2 webcasts. The first one's going to be Vanguard at 4 o'clock, and the second one will be for Pax Nora at 4:30. On behalf of Sony Online Entertainment, thanks a lot.
Okay.
We're going to show the trailer now,
See you guys in game.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sony.